Joining us now from the nation's capital is Spencer Neale, a breaking news reporter from the Washington Examiner. Spencer, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So we actually got a lot of developments. I'm glad you're a breaking news reporter because just today, Amy Klobuchar dropped out. We saw Pete Buttigieg. We saw Tom Steyer. What is happening right now in the Democratic primary?
Hi, thank you for having me. I think what's happening is we are seeing, a lot of the fringe candidates who really didn't have an opportunity to win this race try and coalesce their support so that they can, possibly jostle for a cabinet position in the future. I think the Democratic Party realizes that Bernie Sanders really has a shot of winning this. And if they don't clear up the field, he is going to win this. And so I think that's exactly what we're seeing today.
I think you're exactly right. And it kind of raises the question, to me at least, is what is Senator Elizabeth Warren doing? Because it's a little strange to me that these more ideological type of people, the moderates, have kind of dropped out in support of furthering their ideology, that being a more centrist approach to politics. And then you see Senator Elizabeth Warren, who, once again, it doesn't look like there's any path to the nomination. She's a more progressive candidate. However, over the past couple days, she's been kind of bashing Senator Bernie Sanders. She has not dropped out, and a lot of people say her support would go to Bernie Sanders. Do we have any suggestion, really, of what Senator Elizabeth Warren is doing at this point?
I think that she still thinks that she can win the whole thing. I think it's fair to assume that much of her support will go to Sanders. She has run on a progressive platform. But what we have to remember with Elizabeth Warren, she was treated as the front runner, and rightfully so, throughout October and November. And for many of these other candidates that are dropping out, outside of Buttigieg, who won in Iowa, none of them really got to that top tier status. And so for Elizabeth Warren, I think she still thinks that she has a pathway to victory. And I think she's also made it a personal vendetta, a personal mission to make sure that Michael Bloomberg does not secure the nomination. So I think that's part of it, too.
No, I think you're right. And especially seeing her over the past couple of days, I guess weeks now at this point, kind of showing her support for what would happen at a brokered convention, saying that they should let the process play out, let the rules that were decided before the race began kind of come to fruition, rather than saying she would just blindly throw her support behind whoever has the most delegates at that point. But you bring up Michael Bloomberg, and I think it's a very interesting thing because he got into this race a little bit late. He hasn't been on any of the ballots leading up to Super Tuesday, but he's been spending hundreds of millions of dollars in ads. So a lot of people don't necessarily know how Super Tuesday will turn out for Michael Bloomberg. But he got into this race because he saw that Sanders was surging, could be a front runner, and he didn't like that idea because he didn't necessarily either like Sanders or didn't think that he could beat President Trump in 2020. And now we see Joe Biden kind of getting hot at this time, too. So it kind of looks like it's setting up a matchup among the moderates that Bloomberg was trying to avoid. What is the Bloomberg campaign looking at, as well as the Biden campaign going into Super Tuesday?
Yeah, it's quite ironic that Bloomberg, it appears, got into this race to make sure a socialist did not head the ticket. And there is a very good chance that he ensures that that happens tomorrow. He's polling right there with Biden in many Super Tuesday states, and he is definitely going to pull moderate support away from Biden. So I think it's a great irony that Bloomberg is still in the race, and I think he actually might be the person who ensures that, again, a socialist is at the head of the Democratic ticket.
No, I think that's exactly spot on. And it's kind of an interesting situation, too, because you see this kind of coming out. It kind of shows you how frequent, I guess, the news cycle changes. I mean, just a week ago, after Bernie Sanders had that very decisive victory in Nevada, everyone was saying he's running away with this thing. Joe Biden might as well drop out. He's done. You fast forward 1 week, and now you see Joe Biden having kind of a similar type of victory in South Carolina. Of course, Bernie Sanders was among Latino support, and then you see Joe Biden more so among black support. So a lot of people are now saying maybe that's the way to win the nomination. So at the end of this for both candidates, I think it comes down to that there might be a brokered convention. That's at least what Mike Bloomberg's hoping for. It looks like that's even what Joe Biden is hoping for right now. What would that look like if Sanders has more delegates?
A brokered convention is the worst thing that can happen if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter. That is the way that Bernie Sanders does not become the nominee. And so there's a reason why we are seeing arguments for a brokered convention coming out of certain media organizations, because the reality is it's the only way that the DNC is going to get a moderate to the top of that ticket if Super Tuesday polls come close to what we're seeing, because it looks like it's going to be a landslide for Sanders. So brokered convention, in my opinion, is the only way we're going to see a moderate on the top of that ticket. And there's a reason why we're hearing it in the media quite a bit, because obviously we know that there's a substantial part of this country that do not want to see a socialist on top of the Democratic ticket. And I think that a lot of those people are involved in the Democratic Party. So I think a brokered convention looks bad for Bernie Sanders.
No, and I think it's important to note, too, that it's a lot easier to kind of take the nomination away from Bernie Sanders if it's like 25%, 24%, 23% with Biden and Bloomberg right behind him, compared to if it's something like 50% for Bernie Sanders and the next second place person has like 17% or something like that. So these races still very much so are important, but I think you're spot on by saying that we're going to have a very good idea of what it looks like moving forward after tomorrow. Spencer Neale, thank you very much for joining us tonight.